get started. Welcome. So this is the new Academic Achievement Committee. Reynard Ross should be joining us shortly. And actually, before we get started, why don't we go ahead and have public comment? And Jane Skydema, would you like to come? So. Yeah, this is the public comment stuff. So.
Just anywhere here?
It's just anywhere, yeah.
Okay. Jamie, I'll take your seat here.
You'll be on camera. You will be able to see yourself. What channel? Channel 27, right? So, okay.
Gosh, see, I'm not prepared for that. Exactly. Well, I'm Jane Skydema, and I'm from the Vocal Music Workshop. We are a music education and performance organization. I'm the executive director, and we have been involved in after-school enrichment activities for 15 years, and we've been involved in Grand Rapids Public Schools during the school day, providing choirs in schools that don't have choirs since 2005. And this year, it's exciting. We are involved in some loop and especially some loft programs. And I didn't know about this committee until this morning or your meeting. I heard about it and thought, oh, I'm really interested to come. I'm finding, that the needs are so great for children after school, and from my perspective, they're so great in the arts area because we so firmly believe at the VMW that, we understand music and art is taken out of schools or, it's reduced, and there are, legitimate reasons for that. But we don't believe that just because it's taken out, they can't have it. And we as community organizations must step up and make sure that kids receive the same kind of arts experiences that kids 3 generations ago did. So we're at Loft, and we're with 3 high schools, and we are in essence doing a production company. Kids will be putting on a show. They're learning how to budget, they're learning, about building sets, designing lighting, designing costumes, learning music, so front of house, back of house, publicity, all of these things. And it's us learning the lay of the land, wanting to bring, some sort of a curriculum in there that has some rigor to it, that has some real substance, so that they have fun, they learn, but they also learn some skills that are going to serve them, in high school and college and beyond. So I'm really interested to know the evaluation. I'm interested to know what level of quality, what rigorousness is the school wants in these activities, because we're really excited to be a part of it, and I want to, see where we can fit and where we can help to make it better. That's why I'm here. Thanks.
You guys have any questions or comments?
No, it's very interesting.
One of the things.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
You did mention music and arts. When you say arts, are you including the theatrical pieces in there as well?
In what we're doing with Loft, it is actually, we're not putting on a musical with them, but we're putting on more of a musical review show. So there's not as much, teaching them acting technique. But it is that whole production, what goes into it, the decisions that have to be made. So, they have a budget, and we go to the Home Depot, and they have to figure out, well, this is what we wanted, but, we only have this much money. So real world experiences for them in all of those different areas.
Thank you.
And I got to see my daughter perform with Vocal Music Workshop. One of the things that we'll get to in that is that there are, and we're going to meet Lynn also later, so we'll get a good snapshot of the after-school programs, is that there's a lot of different people who are involved in Grand Rapids Public School after-school programs, and I like that Jane is representing one of them. There are a lot of small organizations that do really important work, and they have a variety from Vocal Music Workshop, but also Girls on the Run, small organizations that do short plan. I mean, there's a lot of different groups who do either short-term or longer-term, 1 day a week, not 5 day a week programming, and it actually ends up creating it's a lot of opportunities, but as we try to evaluate the effectiveness of those, it creates problems because Jane's organization has different goals than 21st century funding programs have for it, and but yet at the same time, the organization provides really needed work. So filling the gap of the arts that are missing from our curriculum. So I'm glad that you came today.
Yeah, and
Jane.
I'm interested to know what the goals of the 21st century funding are too, and what what are they evaluating? What are your benchmarks with that? Because, like I said, I'm really
Yeah.
new to this landscape.
You should get, we'll get you some information from this evaluation. So
Okay,
that we're
great.
going to see some shortly. So,
Thank
okay,
you.
Thanks. Any other public comment? So now the public won't show up because I'll ask them to comment. So, I'd like to also have a conversation regarding the way we're going to organize the committee for the year. Mo and I met to discuss with Carolyn Evans the way we're going to structure the committees. I want to wait to have that for two reasons. One, because I'm hoping Reynard will get here, and secondly, so we can get people up here that need to leave early up here first. And so, and is that's you and you and you. Okay. Okay. So instructional council has to. Are you going to do instructional council updates? Okay. And you have to pick up a child, so we'll give you precedence. So, and since it's first on the agenda, we'll go with that. Yeah. So why don't we have you come up first? And if you could
Well, thank you.
tell us who you are and what your job
I am
is.
Cindy Pack, and I am chairing instruction.
Well, she introduced her. She was telling us earlier that you are a mentee of hers. So, and she's saying you're a fine person.
Well, she's
So that's
always-
quite a challenge.
she's
It's
fairly
quite a
too-
balance you pulled off.
She's very
you know,
too
so.
kind also.
So,
So, thank you. I am chairing the instructional council this year. And instructional council has actually met twice since the last time I was in front of you. So that was, I believe, back in November that we met. And some of the items that instructional council has worked on since we last talked was we have identified one subcommittee so far, and that is a technology subcommittee. That subcommittee is their goal or their task that they have set for themselves is that they want to make recommendation on standards for equity and technology accessibility across the district. And they're exploring a couple other options. One of the conversations that they are currently having is taking a look at social media and what are our policies around social media. Two of the other identified proposed subcommittees are curriculum, assessment, and then an ad hoc committee, actually that would be three. Then we've also had presentations from the curriculum team on revisions to U.S. history content at City High School. There've just been some small revisions that have been made there. And then City High School has also shared a draft of a course syllabi for two courses. One is called Creativity, Action, and Service, and the other one is the Diploma Program Extended SI. And then the process will be followed, and we're going to meet one more time on those syllabi. In fact, in just a couple days, we meet again. A couple other areas of focus is instructional council is reviewing its own process right now for reviewing and recommending new syllabi. And then instructional council is also creating a process for the evaluation of new courses. So that's just a conversation that we're just starting. In fact, a few of us will be meeting prior to the instructional council meeting that's occurring on Thursday. So that's my update. Any questions?
I have a couple questions just for to kind of set the groundwork before I open it up to others. First of all, can you again, assuming other than being Mo's mentee, what is your and being leading the instructional council? What is your other work
What is my other work? My title is School Reform Facilitator
Okay.
for the district. So that means that my focus is on school improvement at the secondary schools. So that that's both middle school and high school. And then I also do work quite a bit with our school improvement grant schools.
Okay. And then, can you tell us about the makeup of the instructional council? Just a general description of what the instructional council
Okay,
is.
so instructional council is made up of both district level staff, central office staff, and then it's also made up of essentially teachers is the other half. So that's divided, and then we have two other individuals. Mr. Helder is also a part of the team, and then Ms. Evans is also a part of the team, and they are non-voting members.
Okay, so this is a voting body that,
When we loosely follow Robert's rules,
Okay.
and we do have conversations, but we do try to keep to some decorum. Sometimes it's a spirited decorum, but
GREA selects their, the GREA selects their 7, is it?
yes,
Okay.
right,
Are board members welcome to sit in your committee?
absolutely. But that would be non-voting.
Thank you.
What sort of things do you vote on? Obviously, I'm a little late, but what sort of things are votable items, I guess?
So if a syllabi is we would, whether we'd recommend a syllabi to the board for approval.
for a new course? Or- okay.
The description of the instructional council is in the teacher's contract, the GREA contract with the district, and usually 7 members of administration, 7 members of teaching staff, and they go and deal with pilot programs, textbook adoption, curriculum, and what am I missing?
That pretty much covers it, yeah.
And recommend it to us.
So, is a majority vote required to move something forward?
You know, that's a really good question. Generally, to move it forward, it still will come back if it's something that's important, but yes, in my experience, that majority vote, yes.
Could you say again, how often do you meet?
Once a month.
Once a month?
Yep, it's 2 hours once per month. And then the subcommittees have not started officially meeting at this time, but there are dates that they have floated out for the subcommittees to meet on additionally so that they can move their work forward.
And I think we have a list of the members that we've received. Do you remember that? I haven't, I know I have a list, so
Okay.
if you want
I
that.
can make sure that you
want to make
get-
sure
I
everyone
can
has that,
certainly,
so you
yes.
know who's on that group.
Yeah, actually, I wonder if for future meetings, like this is really good information. A couple of things that I hear is it sounds like some work is happening in instructional council, and that people are getting along and doing the work well. And that hasn't always been true with instructional
That's what I've
council.
heard.
Oftentimes, meetings don't
True,
happen. One side, or there's always I hear lots of stories about whether or not it's effective. But it sounds like good work is happening, and then also I guess if the names of people would be helpful. Could we have, this is because we're going to talk about this, is that we're kind of move more towards having reports and less kind of less conversation about everything, like maybe like an outline for some, just like the stuff that you mentioned that you're working on, if it could be included in packets for future, just so,
Like
oh, you
this.
have that, yeah, something exactly like that, so that would
Be
be
done.
very good. And then I have to take notes really quickly, because we do, I would say we often, as a board member, we often get challenged by what does or doesn't happen in instructional council. So knowing what's happened in instructional council ends up being very useful for board members.
Certainly.
So
All right.
anyway, so,
I'll leave these with Ms. Bayak.
okay,
Okay.
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then you have a meeting also, right? Okay. Well, here's the thought. The reason why is that I'd like to have a conversation with the committee regarding the structure of the meetings for the year. And I don't want to take into your time, but it does end up relating a little bit to what you're going to do. But if you're in a hurry, we could do that discussion after your.
That would be great if you could do that. But I just would, it's next door, so it's, but it is a community agency, so I wouldn't want to stand them up.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead, here's, I'll just let the committee know in terms of it. Again, Mo and I got together with, Carolyn Evans, and this has been the primary way that the board has been informed about lots of stuff related to the education of the district, which is of course what we do, right? And trying to figure out how do we do it, how do we learn of the stuff that the board needs to know, such as what happens in instructional council or what happens in after-school programs. But also how do we, but since we only have one meeting a month, over the course of a year with holidays, et cetera, we end up with 10 meetings, and how do we really capture? So we end up with either marathon meetings, and then the end result is the only people that know the material are the people on the committee, because the reports are quite lengthy, the discussion is quite lengthy, and so we don't even end up being a well-informed board. What Carolyn and I talked about is that if we can move to a variety of shorter reports on issues that either board members or administration felt was important for the board to be informed on, or to be perhaps asked for input on, that we would have more of those reports each month, but we wouldn't spend a lot of time discussing them. And that those topics would be topics that we would all, the four of us, would agree to, or administration can bring forward, or other board members can ask us questions, that we would do. And we would request well in advance that those reports be done, and they would be much shorter than the documents that we have here today. So for those of us that decided to look into this at 10 o'clock last night, right? It's like, oh my gosh, 121 pages. Right, so, so we can all be.
Read thoroughly, no.
Well, actually, fortunately, you know, I actually read far too much of it for my schedule, but anyway, so that way, so we create a scenario where most board members are reading most of the documents that this committee ends up seeing, and that if we feel we need to input. The second portion of our event is that each month we would take up an issue that the board should have input into, or at least should be very much aware of it. And that we only do 3 or 4 of these throughout the whole year. And we actually become a working committee where we consider policies that need to be considered over 2, 3, even 4 meetings. The one that we're going to start with is the teacher evaluation, and there's very important reasons why we're starting with that, which we'll discuss when we get to it. So I'm going to ask that we do the loop after-school program evaluation discussion now, so we can get that done beforehand. But just to let you know is that I will be asking for a list of topics for either the reports or the policy-related discussions, and we'll go through. And this is basically following the this draft document that was included in our packet, but we'll come back to that. So why don't we go ahead and have you all come forward and discuss it. And introduce yourself.
Yes, sure. I'm
Again,
Walter DeBoer, work in the Office of Assessment and Evaluation, and this is Jamie Gordon, who's the Director of the Office of Extended Learning. And I did get a chance to meet with Pastor Moody before the meeting. The rest of you guys know me and know my work. But I introduced myself to him and told him a little about what our office does. And just for the public record, our office, well, it's responsible for a number of things, but we're responsible annually for evaluating anywhere from 8 to 10 or more district programs, practices, or policies. We do formal evaluation reports of those each year. And then we act as kind of an internal, unbiased arm of the district where we can work with people like Jamie and talk about what's working well, what isn't working well, what needs to be effective and non-effective, and make recommendations. And then those reports go through an internal review process, internal dissemination process, eventually go to the board for this kind of presentation. Once they do, they become a matter of public record. And we have a number of external stakeholders who are always interested in those evaluations and reports, so they are breathlessly waiting for these to go before the board so they can get their hands on them and see for themselves what's working and what isn't. So today I'm here to talk about the Loop After School Program evaluation from 2011-2012. And it may seem like we just did this, but that was for the 10-11 program, and that evaluation report was just late in getting on your agenda. It was done on time, it just was late in getting on your agenda. So it may feel like we just did this recently, but that was for the previous year. And the report is similar. The things that we looked at and the outcomes are similar, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. Just as an evaluation background, our district provides after-school programs at 27 elementary, 5 middle, and 4 high schools last year. Funding from the 21st Century Community Learning Center grants last year totaled $4.8 million, so this is a pretty large enterprise. And the 21st Century program is a key component of the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, so it's been around for a while. Our district contracts with 4 service providers and a host of community partners to provide services for kids. Grant recipients are required to participate in a statewide evaluation and then also to conduct local evaluations. So this is the local evaluation. The GRPS evaluation report provides both formative and summative information for program improvement. That really is the purpose of all our program evaluations.
Could you explain what you mean by that? Formative and summative?
Formative being, what are the practices and what's working well in terms of the services you're providing? Are you doing them to a high degree of quality? Are you following quality standards? Are you serving the students who you intended to service? And are you doing it in a high quality way? And summative has to do with outcomes. So are you achieving the outcomes that you intended, whether it's student attendance rate improvement or test scores or whatever that might be. So it's always a combination of both formative and summative. So some of the key measures of the evaluation report, we describe participating students, their levels of participation in terms of the number of days they participated, their school day attendance rates, comparing those between the previous school year and the school year of the evaluation, looking at changes in suspension rates, attainment of life skills, parent participation and involvement in the program, and then measures of program quality. We look at instructional outcomes such as MAP growth and then meet performance change. We look at perceptions of key stakeholders such as students, parents, classroom teachers of the students who were served, and also program staff. So some of the key findings, almost 1/3 of loop participants attended fewer than 30 days, and the 3,049 who attended 30 or more days are considered frequent participants. I put that in quotes because that's a term that actually the state and the federal government have created. Those are called frequent participants. And among frequent participants, the average number of days attended was 92. Half of these were African American, and white and Hispanic students were slightly underrepresented in comparison to the district population overall for those grade levels. This is a distribution of the total days attended, and the reason that I show this to you is that the distribution of attendance is very unlike a normal curve. So most human endeavors, when you plot them out, they look sort of like a normal curve. This is very much different. So the point here is that there are a lot of students who attend fewer than 30 days, and there are an awful lot of students who will attend maybe between 5 and 10 days over the entire year. So when people ask about what are the after-school programs doing and are they helping kids and so forth, you need to keep in mind there are a lot of kids who participate in programs, but not at the frequent participant level. And then even of those, if you look at the bar there on the x-axis, even those who attend 30 or more days, there's a wide distribution there from anywhere from 30 days to 150 days or more. So to say who is the program serving and who is it impacting, there's a wide variety of students who participate at all different levels. So you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at results. Some additional findings: student participation in specific programming is tracked on a daily basis and then is submitted to the state evaluator, which is Michigan State University. Programming is broadly categorized as either academic or non-academic, and then within each of these categories, there are further subcategories of programming. And so that's what these look like. These are the total hours that students participated at an aggregated level. So again, in the categories levels, it's academic versus non-academic, and then within each of those categories, you have subcategories in the academic category of total academics and traditional academic activities, academic enrichment, and homework. All of those the state considers to be academic programming. And the non-academic are such things as recreation, such as games, free play, social activities, sports, both team and non-team, the arts, youth development, technology, and health. So those are characteristics and categories that the state actually puts together, and we just comply with their nomenclature. But that gives you some idea of the distribution of hours of programming. Among frequent participants, 39% improved their percent of school days attended from the previous year. This compares to 36% for non-frequent participants at those very same schools. Overall, frequent participants attended 95% of days enrolled in 2011, 2012. So that's a very high percentage.
Walter, I want to just confirm, so when we're comparing frequent participants, we know who those are. Those are kids with 30 days. Non-frequent would be would those include people who, those would be less than 30 days, but it would also be people who don't enroll at all?
Right, who didn't attend at all.
So it would include everyone, so it's really those at more than 30 and everyone else?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, good question.
Walter, do we have, is there somewhere in here that's going to compare what we found last year to this year?
I don't do that specifically, but I can try to do it anecdotally if you ask about it. Try to remember.
Thank you,
Thanks.
because I know we went through this.
Right.
Right, yeah, so.
Among frequent participants, 58% decreased the number of times they were suspended when compared to the previous year. And this finding is virtually identical to non-frequent participants at the same schools. Statistically, students who attended Loop a greater number of days tended to have fewer suspensions. Parents are more likely than students to indicate that the program had helped their child either some or a lot in attaining life skills. You can see that on these charts here. So up above, you have the students' assessments, there's kind of their self-assessment of to what extent they were helped by the program, either some or a lot in each of those life skill areas. And then you see the parents' responses, and parents are a little more optimistic about how much the program has improved those areas. Additional findings, all Loop providers plan and schedule numerous parent and family events throughout the year with hundreds of participants. In fact, 80% of the 638 parents who completed surveys indicated that they had attended family events, and 92% of them agreed that staff had made them aware of family events. So this is a pretty big part of the program. A slightly higher proportion of non-frequent participants at Loop schools met or exceeded their typical MAP growth targets in both reading and math compared to frequent participants. So that's what that looks like. And this should look familiar to you. We looked at this same thing last year. So I'm going to get to your question. Last year we saw slightly different results. We saw that frequent participants had a slightly higher percent who met or exceeded their typical growth targets in both reading and math. So this is a slight step back. It's not off the cliff bad. It's just a slight step back. And remember what I said last year. You just need to take all these in the context of what we're seeing over time. So to have these slip back just a little bit in 1 year, to me, is not cause for alarm. Just in the same way last year, it wasn't cause for balloons and so forth. To say this indicates the program is definitely effective at impacting student test scores. And I'll just reiterate again that Loop programming includes both academic and non-academic aspects to it. And if you look at all the programming that students have available to them over the entire school year, summer programming, school day programming, and so forth, Loop academic programming is really a pretty small part of that. So we're required to look at this, and we do look at it. I'm always cautious about saying proof positive the program is working or proof positive that it isn't working. It is what it is, and on some grade levels, frequent participants did better than non-frequent participants. Overall, the differences are very slight, only a percentage point.
It seems like it may be interesting to see by school site, as far as frequency versus, because obviously there's some sort of variable that determines, why folks who are frequent participants are performing slightly less this year academically versus, at least testing-wise, versus others. So just wanting to isolate maybe what that variable might be. Obviously, it could be, personnel at one site versus another. Could be simple. Obviously, it could be a variety of things. So I'm just wondering how easy would it be to pull that out from again, one site versus another.
It would not be hard to do. When I first started doing these evaluations years ago, in fact, I did provide school-level results, but I'm real cautious about doing that because the numbers that you have at a school level are really pretty small. And so to draw conclusions at a school level about program impact, I think I'm a little cautious about doing that. So can it be done? It certainly can be done. But I'm a little cautious about getting down to that kind of level of detail and saying that differences between schools are due to a better Loop program here than in that.
Yeah, I get that. I can, I guess, understand that level of caution. But I guess I would also say, how are we to, identify effectiveness without getting at different levels. Because if we just look at strictly numbers here, just based on this year, one could argue that, you know, the more you go to loop, the worse you're going to do. So obviously, I don't think that it's that cut and dry. So I guess I don't know. I mean,
What we don't know is what would those kids who go to loop have gotten on those tests if they didn't go to loop.
no, yeah.
And the thing,
So that makes it really challenging. And we also don't know that some parents at one school might send their kids to school, to a after-school program for one reason. And
Yeah, exactly. And that's some of my notes even prior to
so
the day.
it's really tough. It's a really
Yeah.
tough argument.
the thing to keep in mind too is that academics is 3 days a week for 1 hour a day. So in essence, they're doing 3 hours a week of academic by certified staff. So that is what it is. You know, if you're getting 5 days of enrichment, because that's really, the enrichment is to support the academics, but it definitely looks different than a certified teacher teaching content. There's going to be a different level of expertise. One of the things that we really did focus on this year and were very successful in, we really worked with building principals this year to say, hey, you have an opening in your loop program, help us find one of your staff. And so that these are your staff, they're connected. So we have, of our 31 sites this year, 21 of the lead teachers are from that specific building. The other 10 are GRPS teachers, and a lot of them were just in another building where the lead teacher was already there. The other thing that we really pushed this year to really focus on was increasing the number of certified staff that we had program-wide. And out of our 93, 84 are actually certified teachers. So we really were able to ramp that up, and we hope to see some difference in that. I think I also mentioned to you last time, too, was a big difference was some consistency in leadership in the buildings. This year, we didn't have to go to every building and start over with the principal. You know, we had our principal from last year. We were able to establish some criteria, establish some, you know, what their goals are. So we were able to continue some things. So we're hoping that we see some of those things show up in the results next year.
One other thing real quick, as far as that academic, when we compare the subcategories, how does, I'm looking at like youth development, for example, versus academic enrichment. How is it determined that hours categorized in one versus the other? Is it based on whether there was a
We don't
certified
necessarily
teacher?
agree with how they categorize. For example, they categorize technology and computer as non-academic. Well, we use that in our academic programming quite a bit, but that's just how the state has determined that's how they categorize. We kind of go back and forth with
Jane
them
might
on it
think
every
the
year.
arts is an academic
Right.
endeavor, too, so.
Because we do read about, we do reading street, there's tons of things that we do that are academic on computer, but those hours are being counted in non-academic. So it's not really a good picture. It's their viewpoint of what they're categorizing as academic. We would probably do it differently. What Jane is doing for us in the high schools has very specific academic pieces. It has reading and writing components and math components in it, but it's viewed from the state as, it's considered from the state as non-academic.
So is the defining point for the state is if there's a certified teacher leading that activity? I mean, what sort of, or is there simple?
And we've asked the question. We haven't really gotten it straight.
I got you, fair enough.
I don't get the impression that they
Yeah.
have defined it down to that level, to say, here's exactly the criteria we're gonna use to define our programming. They admit that it's a little bit sloppy, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was for reading, and there's a similar graph for results, for math, and here you see similar results, where non-frequent participants overall were slightly more likely to have achieved a typical growth. Then the other standard that we have is students meeting their college and career-ready MAP growth targets. So that is to what extent are students on that trajectory to getting to the college-ready MAP score as an 11th grader. So that's something NWEA provides us. It's a higher standard, obviously, so fewer students reach it. Here the results get actually switched. So for this, which is a higher standard, frequent participants are slightly more likely to have attained that level of growth targets than non-frequent participants in reading. Again, you have a lot of variation by grade level. That's reading, and here's math, and they were identical. again. These are higher standards, higher bar, so fewer students can achieve that. Finally, the Loop program continues to receive high scores in the annual Youth Program Quality Assessment, which is administered by an independent contractor using on-site observations. Here you see some of those scores. They divide it into the school-age youth PQA, which is the lower grade levels, programs for lower grade levels, and then the youth PQA for the upper grade levels. The way to think about this is it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy. So you have to have a safe environment before you can have a supportive environment, and you have to have a supportive environment before you can have student interaction, and you have to have student interaction before you can have engagement. So that's why those scores tend to get a little harder and more difficult to attain each time, at each level, but those are high scores overall on a score of 1 to 5.
What's the difference between the two charts here?
The one on top is for programs serve lower grade level youth. I think it's grades 1 through 3, or 1 through 5?
1 through 4.
1 through 4, okay. Annual surveys are an evaluation requirement by the state, and surveys were completed this past year by 638 parents, 205 program staff, classroom teachers on behalf of 2,260 Loop participants, and 742 student participants in grades 4 and up. Overall, those surveys show,
I see his light go off. The reason there's only 7, they identify students that they're going to give the survey. They don't necessarily give it to every student. So that number may look small compared to the number of students in the program, but they kind of go through and randomly select these students that we want to get the survey from. I saw you.
Actually, I was just trying to hold back a yawn, to be honest.
so from a big picture perspective, the surveys show a high degree of parent and student satisfaction, a high degree of job satisfaction among staff, kind of a moderate degree of positive impact on classroom behaviors, a moderate degree of linkage to school day programming, and minimal use of evaluative data by program staff at programmatic levels. So finally, 2 recommendations come out of this. First, I think there needs to be more frequent, direct, and purposeful use of evaluative data to inform practices at the site level. And second, a greater collaboration between Loop providers and teachers to align program content with GRPS curricular content. So what questions do you have? Anything about the report itself, or any questions for Jamie about the program?
I will address both. Like I said, we've seen the report, so these are things that we've already known and kind of started to address. One of the things with the more frequent and direct purposeful use of data, we've started that. We've worked with Weicker Center. We have Trevor, his name is Trevor Davies, he comes in. We've taken all of the program data. We've met individually with each provider, and we have drilled that down by site. Here's what's working by site. Here's where we can make some improvements. We have done some things different with professional development even here within the district, making sure that our staff are connected to professional development and to trainings that support GRPS initiatives, for example, PBIS. So we've started that trend now. The collaboration, same thing, we're working with Loop providers and teachers. We've had professional development that brought site coordinators and teachers together for the first time. Site staff amongst the agencies now meet. We meet 4 times a year just so we can brainstorm. The lead teacher meetings that we do are monthly, and those are more now, instead of just reading through an agenda of things to do, they're more professional development oriented, and we're sharing lessons, we're doing modeling. Actually, our academic coordinator is actually getting into those classrooms now, working with teachers, making sure that that connection is happening. We're documenting our meetings between the lead teacher, site coordinator, and principal, so we're making sure that that connection is happening on a regular basis. So there's a lot of things that are happening to try and address some of those things that we think can make it better.
A great, good analysis, good recommendations too, in terms of this stuff, the evaluation stuff. And so, I know you have a meeting next door.
I can wait for a couple questions.
Yeah, just, I do have a couple though. Just, Mr. DeBoer, I missed when you were talking about the map data, and you were talking about the math in particular. You mentioned some sort of indication about potential college success or something, and I
So
apologize.
what NWEA, which is the
Yep.
publisher of the software, is able to do is for each student, based on what their fall score is, and based on a national norm, and they're looking ahead at when they would be 11th graders and have a more or less passing score on the ACT, they can project where students need to be at each point in time.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of a college and career-ready trajectory.
Gotcha.
So no matter where you're at, based on your fall score, you get assigned a spring score that gets you on that trajectory. So you either make that,
Target
or you
score,
don't
yeah.
make it. It's a target that you
Gotcha.
can make.
Okay. Gotcha. And I guess just later, Jamie, I want to maybe hear more about this content alignment because you know, full-time work for myself as well. That's sort of a struggle as kind of an educational partner on aligning what we do with the curricular content.
It has really been helpful having teachers who are in the building because they know what the school improvement goal is. They
Yeah.
know what, objectives that building has, so that's really helped tighten up that connection. The other thing is we've done a little bit more, or a lot more with Lynn with their, with the Wallace Foundation, because they're gonna help us look at that data and help provide some of that professional development that could support, the provider side of the program.
With that,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
because I want to invite them up too.
Yeah, I just have a quick one. On the recommendations, the greater collaboration between loop providers and teachers, how are you going to, do you have a plan on how you're going to do that? That's going to be a little difficult.
We've already started some of that. It is difficult to schedule them to meet on a regular basis, but what we've done is we've had such good relationship with the providers that they have said that you tell us when those meetings are and we'll get our staff there, that we'll make our schedule work for them. So they will come to periodically teacher meetings so we can have that one-on-one connection. But we also do monitor a lot closer than we have in the past, making sure that they're meeting at least once a week to talk about what we're doing for this week. We have this academic thing going on now. How can you support that with an enrichment activity? They're tying field trips into what's going on. We're doing something around, we're doing We Are GR for our big collaborative youth fair at the end of the year. So as they're talking about history and the history of Grand Rapids, they've tied in a trip to Meyer Garden or to the museum. So we're doing a lot more of that collaboration between the academic side and the enrichment side.
Is there a lot of collaboration between the parents as well?
Yeah, it will be new for us as we are trying to put together parent advisory committees, and we're working with Emmanuel Armstrong because he's got that going for the district side, parent engagement. So we're really trying to tie into what they're already doing instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and just have another thing for parents to go through. So we're really trying to look at, we did it with the senior event, as a matter of fact. They had the big senior event, so we made sure we tied Loft into that and got those parents and our seniors there. Really just trying to collaborate with what the district is doing. And it was a big success. We had a lot of parents
Was that
turn
the
up.
senior event at Ottawa High
Yeah.
School? Yeah, I attended that. That was great.
Yeah, so we partnered in that parent activity, and we're trying to do a lot more of those types of things. We partnered with the counseling office and youth advocates and people who have that support role. We partner with them on professional development. We've been trying to get our academic coordinator plugged into our academic PD so that we can make sure that what we're doing is supporting what's happening during the day. So.
Okay, thanks. I want to invite Lynn Heemstra to come up and introduce herself and talk about what her relationship is to this work as well.
I'm gonna go if that's okay.
Yes, thanks. Thanks a lot, Jamie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
This is mine.
Thank you. We're trying.
Let me get you out of the way.
We have some good people on board.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming.
My name's Lynn Heemstra, and I'm Executive Director of Our Community's Children, which is a partnership with the City of Grand Rapids and the Grand Rapids Public Schools. And my office looks at public policy. It looks at partnerships, working with community partners to advance quality of life for children in the city, and has some programs related to civic engagement. So we run the Mayor's Youth Council as well as the LEAD program, which offers job training and civic engagement for teens, and then places them with Mayor 50 businesses who've stepped up to the plate. So we've got that happening this summer. We've been actively involved in facilitating the Expanded Learning Opportunity Network since 2001, and in fact that was a result of a grant that both Grand Rapids Public Schools and my office wrote to the National League of Cities. So we have a long-standing history of partnering together on the whole area of after-school programs, because after-school programs is a public policy issue as it relates to public safety. It has to do with the education of our young children, and it also has to do with youth development. So after school is a wonderful place to interface with multiple sectors, working together within the community with many vendors and partners to do what's right for kids. Jamie mentioned the Wallace Foundation grant. We received a grant of $765,000 last year. It's a almost 4-year grant because they're going to be writing a national report based on our work. This grant really showcases what's going on in Grand Rapids, and in particular, we're really focusing on collective impact. What can we do across the network of after-school providers that shows that we are having an impact on a child's safety, learning, and development? So Dr. Baker is the chair of the evaluation committee, and we've had an ambitious research agenda. So we've looked across the board at all of our ELO members, and there are over 40 providers of after-school programs. And we've looked at what indicators we're tracking. The LOOP, the 21st Century Grant, is the most ambitious, I would say, and it has indicators that most organizations do not have or have the capacity to actually even track. So our challenge is, what are the 2 or 3 indicators that as a community we want to really say, this is what we're going to track to ensure we're producing the best outcomes for children, okay? And so this report is very useful and helpful. Any questions?
Did you recognize the research challenges as they were going over this report?
Yes. So just so you all know, academic impact in after-school programs is always a challenge because of the limited time that children are in after-school programs. We obviously have done a broad and very in-depth literature review of the impact of after-school on academics, and rarely do you find that there is a direct correlation. However, we do know that after-school does provide the context which enhances learning for children. We know that children feel safe within after-school programs and that they actually have opportunities to learn, to explore, to grow. And our young people in the city have repeatedly said that after-school programs are critical to their development and are obviously a crime prevention strategy. And the ELO network has done research in that. My office has facilitated that with the Grand Rapids Juvenile Offense Index report, and we have evidence that kids who are involved in after-school programs are not involved with the police. They don't come to the attention of the police because they're engaged in positive activities. So we're going to begin to streamline a little bit more what we can across the system to be saying what are those indicators we're going to track, and then how do we ensure that the programs are of the best quality. And you were exposed to this youth program quality assessment tool that's being offered across the system through the Wallace Grant, through other after-school providers, and we're actually looking at what are the variables in program quality that best move the needle to get the best outcomes for youth. So you've got an ambitious project?
I just show up to the meetings that Lynn sets virtually every morning at 8:15. So, but it is. I mean, I think all of us. I think that to some extent, would you consider your program an after-school program?
We definitely do after-school activities. That's actually part of what I was.
Are you a member of the ELO network?
I saw GRCC listed
GRCC
there,
is.
but be honest, no one at GRCC has had any conversation with me about our after-school work in GRPS and how that, so I don't know who's the point of contact at GRCC to have them listed, but maybe I do need to find that out and So anyway, to answer your question, yeah, to some extent, yeah, definitely. 4 days a week, we do something after school.
Right, and so I think it's really the great thing about this also is that I've enjoyed being a part of it is that this is a way that lots of institutions in the community end up encountering our youth and the kids that are in Grand Rapids Public Schools, and so so I'm an advocate for finding ways to help those community institutions be a part of it, and to some extent, this evaluation work is what gives the the credibility for that work as well. So
It's awesome work. We've got an amazing network. We're receiving national attention for the work that we've done thus far in terms of alignment across the system, pushing quality of practice. And they're really looking at us because we are really struggling with how do we address these social emotional factors that we know make a difference for kids, and how do we measure that in a way that we can say to the public at large, these programs are absolutely critical and they make a difference in the lives of our children, and they need to be supported and invested. So our ELO network involves all sectors of the community, and we welcome anyone to come on board who's strongly invested in making sure our kids have access to quality after-school programs, without question. And we appreciate your support.
thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
I think that we'll go right into the teacher evaluation. I did notice that with the achievement committee topic discussion we can have at the end. So why don't we go ahead and Mary Jo, are you leading this? Okay. So again, I mentioned earlier that we're going to have reports that are be shorter and it's going to be because these are important conversations. So how do we not ask the questions that we had to ask and then thus have the important answers afterwards? But we will work on that. But this will be the first of several meetings where we'll discuss the issue of teacher evaluation. When I think might have mentioned this at one of our board meetings, but with the FRN conference, the Federal Relations Network conference that the National School Board Association hosted, we got the Kent County contingent got to visit the White House Policy Office, and they discussed what the White House Policy Office, which is different from the Department of Education, which has distinct goals as well, but the White House Policy Office, which is led by a Grand Rapids Public School graduate, their work for the 4 years is teacher evaluation and Common Core implementation. And so that's their work. So it should be our work. So anyway, Mary Jo, you want to
Absolutely.
mention
So
it?
you just set the standard very high, Tony.
Okay, yes.
When a representative from our district is at that level. Terrific. Did you want us to introduce ourselves?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce, yeah, so.
Mary Jo Kuhlman, Assistant Superintendent, Organizational Learning.
Eric Harmson, Human Capital Facilitator and Human Resources. Walter Yebor, Office of Assessment Evaluation.
So, Mary Jo, I don't know what you prepared. We have a lot here, but
You do.
basically, if you can you kind of introduce the context of where we're at with the teacher evaluation?
Sure will.
Why we're having this now?
I will. And actually, this portion of our report is more at the balcony level. So I hope you'll bear with us if you're more at a practice level. And we're doing this intentionally because we think it's important to have a good grasp and understanding what the law says, our framing to it, our approach to it as a district, and then that will anchor all the practice that we will discuss at the next meeting. We will actually dive deep into the actual evaluation tools and the process and what it means to teachers, administrators, et cetera. So it's a two-part thing. I'm going to open very briefly with just a very, basically what I said, that this is a balcony view. Walter's going to talk about the state law, and we're not going to go through every aspect of it, so if you're like, oh boy, no, we won't do that. But we do want to share the highlights that are very key and important to our work. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we are using that as a district and framing it. And then actually we did want to introduce one tool that we think will be a practice so that it sets the conversation up for our next time when we return, I believe in March. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, very good.
Great. So what I do want to say is we agree, we think this is very important work. First of all, it's very close to the heart of staff. I mean, when you start talking about people's evaluations, then we're talking right at the heart now. So whether you're a teacher, administrator, any role in the organization, and our work been this year actually is to rethink and reframe how we perceive evaluation. We are anchoring it in a lens of learning and growth. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but I do want to be sensitive to Eric's time constraints. So I'm going to insert some of my comments later on. But Walter, do you want to walk through the law fairly quickly?
Sure.
And then we'll get to Eric's piece, and then I'll come back and frame the district.
So you have in your packet a bunch of excerpts from the law, and I didn't think you really wanted to go through that line by line. And I'm not an attorney, and I don't play one on TV. So I don't think you really wanted to do that. So what I'm trying to do, what I thought I would do today is just kind of provide the context for our work, how it's related to current law, and how that law came into play, and so forth. Again, trying to give the balcony view of where our work is and how it fits into that historical context. So current law governing teacher evaluation came out of the state of Michigan's failed attempt at a Race to the Top grant back in 2009. You may remember that. Those grants required states to adopt what they called coherent, compelling, and comprehensive education reform. And among those reforms was a more rigorous teacher evaluation system. So subsequently, the Michigan legislature passed a series of laws around education reform starting in 2009 and taking effect in 2010. And one of those was Section 1249 of the revised school code, which deals with teacher and administrative evaluations. Round two came in 2011 with Public Acts 100 through 103. And the pages in your packet include key parts of both of those pieces of legislation. In it, you'll see that the legislation lays out the requirements for a rigorous, transparent, and fair performance evaluation system that covers both teachers and school administrators. That performance evaluation system should be based in significant part on student growth and be used to inform decisions regarding placement, promotion, compensation, and retention. Districts have a fair amount of leeway in implementing the law as long as they meet all the basic requirements. For example, districts can use a variety of local measures of student growth and their own in-place teacher observation tools. And districts can exempt themselves from the statewide evaluation system if they already have implemented and are using a performance evaluation system that meets state requirements. So our district back in November of 2011 submitted the paperwork for that exemption, and we've not heard back officially. We're operating under the assumption that we have been exempted, and certainly the state of Michigan is well acquainted with our work and supportive of it. So to meet those exemption requirements, performance evaluation systems have to be based on student growth that uses research-based methods, incorporates multiple observations, uses evaluation ratings to drive decisions, informs professional development, and that is conducted annually. So although districts have this leeway, the state of Michigan is working to establish a model or a menu of models that school districts can adopt. And in 2011, Governor Snyder established the Michigan Council for Educator Effectiveness, or MCEE, and they are tasked with researching the various systems that are currently in place and develop a recommendation. Their work is ongoing, and although they have issued several interim reports, they've not yet published their final recommendations. But we in Grand Rapids and other districts are closely following their work to see how it compares to the performance systems that are being used at our level. So the performance evaluation system the district is currently using has been vetted by our attorney and meets or surpasses in rigor and in the quality of its evaluative measures all state legislative requirements. In our messaging to date, the district has purposely and specifically connected the performance evaluation system with professional development and personal growth and improvement. The performance system is also consistent with all current teacher tenure laws, but again, our focus has been and is on individual improvement. The district is starting to focus on the requirements of the performance evaluation system for 2013-2014, which requires a higher proportion of the evaluation to be tied to student growth. And at our next presentation, we will go into the performance system in more detail, and we'll show you the video presentation that we put together for school-based staff. We'll go through the evaluation rubric for each division, the performance measures, and the performance criteria that are used to assign an effectiveness rating for each employee. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the historic and legislative context for us.
Can I just add that this piece is probably, if you want a shortcut to the law, this piece is probably your best, the 3 columns. It tells you what the district needs to do and looks at it with those that have been granted or will be granted exemptions and those that do not. So I would say that's probably the best cheat sheet.
For the administrator and teachers, right?
Yes. There is a section in there, although it gets interspersed, and we, as a district, this is the part that I'm gonna save for after Eric, but we, as a district, what we ask of teachers, we are doing as administrators. They mirror each other. They're really not different. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So we're gonna jump to a very practical tool now, so I know this is a little bit, but a little help.
Good afternoon, just to give you, I could tell when you heard human capital facilitators, like, I get that all the time, what is that? What was
Well, I
human
could give a
capital
sociological lecture on that too, but we don't want that.
facilitator? Just to give you a little more background, I was a teacher for 5 years and then building administrator for 15 years. I'm an Otto Hills High School graduate, and so I'm a GRPS kid. And I brought into HR to look at our policies and practices from an educational lens. So, a lot of times HR is about compliance, but making that connection to the academic side of it. How do we in HR support our employees in several endeavors, and one of those being around evaluation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Charlotte Danielson rubric, and that's a rubric that we've been using for many years in Grand Rapids Public Schools. It's not something that's new to our district. It's something we've used for several years around evaluation of our GREA staff. And it comes out of the framework for teaching that Charlotte Danielson used to research-based and nationally recognized framework of what good teaching is.
Do we have that rubric in here?
You do, it's in the last part of your packet is the rubric. I think she has a cover sheet. It will look like this,
I got it, yeah, thank you.
pretty thick, at the very end.
Last year, school districts were required by the MDE to fill out a survey around evaluation, and one of the stats that came out of that is that 50% of the Michigan school districts are using the Danielson rubric for evaluation. It is one of the 4 rubrics being piloted by the Michigan Council on Educator Effectiveness this year. It consists of 4 domains: planning and preparation, instruction, classroom environment, and professional responsibilities. And within those 4 domains, there's smaller buckets. So there's 22 components in those 4 domains, and those 22 components are broken down into 63 elements. And each of the elements is broken down to level of performances. So each element has a descriptor of what does it look like in that element if highly effective practice is going on, if effective practice is going on, if minimally effective practice is going on, or ineffective practice is going on. So there's 63 elements where Danielson has used and developed descriptors around levels of performance. This year, the goals were linked directly to the rubric and to elements. The emphasis is through the academic plan is on domain 3 instruction, 3B, which is using questioning and discussion techniques. So quality questions, discussion techniques, and student participation. So that's been a real emphasis in the academic plan. So again, the evaluation process needs to support that goal in the academic plan. So that has been one of the emphases, is that administrators and observers and evaluators have gotten training on what that looks like, and then giving good feedback to teachers so that instruction can be improved. And again, the evaluation process is about growing and improving instruction so that we can improve student achievement.
Could you repeat that 63 elements again?
Sure. All right. So
Told you
there's
would get down into detail.
there's 4 big domains.
Right.
There's 22 components, and those 22 components are broken down into 63 elements.
Do you need 63, or that's just how it works with the rubric?
That is how the Danielson rubric is set up for the 63 elements. You look at some of those elements when you're doing a classroom observation. Some of them are, you're gonna score depending on the lesson, and also, again, going back to the school improvement goals in the building, to individual teacher goals. So when you go in to do an observation, you look at it in a lens of looking at what are those elements that have the highest leverage to improve instruction that is connected to our either school improvement goals or individual teacher goals.
Do you find it effective?
Do I find that, Danielson? Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Can I just add on to what
Sure.
Eric is saying? This is the piece that I cut out so that Eric could step in because he needs to leave at 5:30.
No, it was good. I mean, I just wanted to know.
Yeah,
the
But I want to
63,
connect it to the.
sounded good, so
It
I
is,
just wanted
it
to hear
actually
more.
is very powerful, because it begins to define what quality teaching and learning looks like for
Yes.
all kids. And I want to emphasize the all. So what it does is, what we did, we set out with our academic plan. Our academic plan is based on student data. Where are our kids performing? Where are the gaps? So what do we need to focus on as a district so we meet the learning needs of students to be successful and to be college and career ready? So when you look at that academic plan, it helps define which areas, because you can't focus on all 60-some. I mean,
Right.
you can, but you can't give it all equal weight. So the academic plan helps us to define which areas we're going to focus on. For example, this year we focused on questioning, which is in the 3rd domain, and it was components B and D. So we can focus and zero in on where do we need to build our schools, our skill set to be more effective with our students' learning. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
How did you determine to focus on that?
We use student data. So we used MEEP, MAP, and that's what we're going to get into in our next meeting. But I want to just set up a few more things if I can.
Real quick, 63 elements, 22, what's the language?
Components.
Components, thank you.
And we're going to dive deeper into this the next time, too. Not this meeting. Go ahead.
What's the formula? I'm the principal, I'm going
You guys want to follow along?
going in. I'm going into the classroom and I'm saying, what do I have? What's the form do
Sure.
I have?
We have a online form that is, that you can go in at the domain level, so you can go at the 4 domains and you can make comments just at the big bucket level. So planning preparation, instruction, classroom environment, and professional responsibilities. Or you also have the option where you can go to the element level and you can rate the instruction during that lesson at element level. Not all the elements, but again, the elements that are focused in the academic plan around 3B and 3D. And then also as an observer, I'm looking at the person I'm observing their individual goals and saying, okay, they have written goals around this area. It is connected to the rubric in this element and component, and that I'm giving feedback around those at the element level. So administrators have the opportunity to give feedback at the big bucket level in those 4 domains, or go down to the element level.
So it's all online?
Yeah, yeah, through an online software.
And they're doing that, probationary teachers and then
All.
tenured teachers
That's-
every year,
that's-
tenured teachers 2 years,
That's actually where we are exceeding what the state is requiring, because the state requires that you do it annually, and we're doing it twice a year. Every teacher in our district will have 2 observations. We already completed the first cycle this fall, and the second cycle gets completed by May.
those are observations, but the evaluation comes, I'm assuming.
So the feedback, the observations precipitate the feedback, so twice a year.
But the final evaluation is a once a year.
Yes, in May. And then if a teacher is a probationary teacher or is on an individualized development plan, they get anywhere between an additional 1 to 3 observations. Yeah, 3 to 5 total,
I wanted to get it down from this stuff
yes.
to what principal walks in and sees and the teacher is doing, which is a lot different than
That's right, what's on paper and what's in reality.
exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it there a minute.
So if I can just add a few other things, and then, do you have any more or questions, please?
Just let Eric
Eric
go.
needs to
And
leave.
that,
All right.
And we're, again, at this is kind of a beginning stage, so this is still the balcony view, so if we can, and actually, so we can do a little bit of work and also make sure we get out of here by somewhat before 6.
If you'd like us to end now, we can,
No,
Tony.
no, let's spend some more time. I just want to kind of give the committee
Okay.
a sense of what our
'Cause we'll
work
bring
is
it
for the
back.
rest of the day. And I would say if we could shoot for being done by 10:02, but that, actually for your portion, if you could spend maybe 10 more minutes and
Sure.
us to spend 10 minutes discussing and then
Sure, we,
move on. Because again, what I think would be good is that if you give us the material that prepares us
Mm-hmm.
to prepare for the next meeting. Okay, so, okay. if we-
we can do that. And the Danielson rubric will be important.
Yes.
That's
that
why we
was
wanted to introduce it
there,
today.
Okay.
So I just have a couple of comments that I want to do to frame this at a balcony level for the district. First of all, this evaluation is an anchor for learning and growth, as I mentioned earlier. And we think that's important because if you look at, probably 95% or plus of our staff actually perform well. So when you look at building a new evaluation system, we really wanted to frame it differently. Rather than base it on those who don't perform well, let's base an evaluation system on what is working. Because 36 hours is all we get for PD, and that's not going to be enough to learn our way out of where we are currently and where we need to be and how do we meet the learning needs of students. Because the learning of students is shifting. Kids learn very differently today than they did even 10 years ago. So we need to learn how to best meet our students.
What measurement are we using to determine, I guess, what this best practice may be? I mean, because it sounds like, and maybe correct me if I'm seeing it differently, but it sounds like you said, what we're looking to do is to emulate, for lack of a better word, things that are working well. So Dr. Baker, being the great teacher that he is, obviously, what he's doing is working, and we'd like to kind of copy what he's doing. But I guess how are we identifying that he is indeed a great teacher to say that, yeah, we're going to try to emulate what Dr. Baker's doing?
That's this Danielson rubric.
Well, I guess with that, though,
Research
I guess
piece.
that's what my maybe questioning is, I guess, because obviously there's, language that's, when you talk about quality, high quality, low quality, those are very relative terms. So, of course, Ms. Slade, being a pretty decent teacher in her own right, she thinks that what she's doing is pretty good quality. So who's saying what she's doing is not quality and what he's doing is quality, and what's the measurement to determine that?
Sure. If you look at this edition is from 1996, and there's a 2011 edition of this. And so what we have been doing is spending some time unpacking to define what that looks like from this edition. And we're using this edition because right now it matches our electronic evaluation system that Eric referenced earlier when Pastor Moody asked, do you have this online? Or one of you asked if it was online. And we said, yes, because that's called Stages. That's how we record all of this online. So we need to move and think about getting the next level of online software so we could move to a newer edition of Danielson rubric. It is available and it is online. You can look online and see it, and if you would like a copy of it, I'm more than happy to provide a copy, where it becomes much more specific, Renard, about what it does look like, because it does become important. The other piece we have been doing, I'm sorry, you sound like you want to ask a question.
No, I was just looking it up. So Danielson rubric 2012?
11.
11, okay.
The other thing we have been doing is...
And this is not, what we have printed is not 2011?
No, this is the one we're currently using, because it
Still with
matches
it.
with the software that we have.
All right.
The other piece that we have been doing is working with Cambridge Education, and they provided the training for 93 of our administrators, plus them. And that has been developing what we call inter-rater reliability, and that's the point you're getting at. So that if Walter and I go into a classroom, do we see the same thing as you described? What's defining low quality and high quality? And that practice, we have spent 2 days in a classroom unpacking the Danielson rubric and looking at videos to start defining that inter-rater reliability. Then we did 4-on-1 coaching in our buildings, and I have to give a great appreciation to our teachers who volunteered to say, yep, you can come into my classroom and do that practice. Then we followed it up with another coaching session of 2-on-1. So our principals and administrators who do evaluation and do these observations have had experts come and teach them how to do that. And we will keep defining the inner rate of reliability.
Inner rated reliability, so that
Yes.
seems to be the key phrase here.
It is.
Okay, let's try to stay at the balcony
Thank you,
level.
Tony. Thank you.
So because again, we're just prepared for the next
And we will
conversation.
really get into
Yeah.
this in depth, and then we would also like to bring David States if
Right,
appropriate.
right.
Just one more question.
Sure.
It sounds like this system kind of helps teachers deal with different learning styles of the students.
Yes, it does. It very much does. So to get on that balcony piece and going along with the question you just asked, Pastor Moody, is what we don't want to develop is a system that says gotcha. We want people to be very clear. This is what it looks like. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're striving and moving toward. So therefore, that anchoring this in learning and development and growth is very important to us. So in order to do that, we wanted to connect everything, and even the law says that you have to include PD. Well, we didn't want to include just PD. We actually set up the academic plan, which defines, again, based on our student data, where our students need to be. And if you look at our MEET scores, we have some gaps of where we want our students to be and where we currently are. And we use that data very seriously and look at it. And A&E has helped us. They interpret that data and also make some recommendations, and the academic team goes through that. We work with our principals and our teachers. Then we said, what are our strategies? For example, this year, as I mentioned, we took Domain 3 instruction. We took the component 3B, which was on questioning. Our students really lacked in that skill set, and it's a key set of skills in order to be college and career ready. So we spent much of our PD on this, and teachers wrote goals around this. And then we also used research to inform where we were heading with this practice. The other one, particularly at the secondary level, was 3D, which was providing feedback to students in a timely, accurate way so that students knew immediately what I learned and what I didn't learn. So I'm giving those as examples of how all of this is tightly aligned and coherent now. So if you pull a thread on one, you are starting to pull a thread on another. Because PD is based on our academic plan, which ties in with the Danielson rubric, which tells you, it defines what quality teaching and learning looks like. The teacher goals define our PD, and then the research sits underneath all of it. So part of this is building the sustainability of this work. If you have organizational knowledge through your PD, by that I mean we're all learning the same thing. It's called the GRPS way. Wouldn't it be great to be branded as we have a GRPS way and everyone knows what that looks like for instruction? Secondly, we have ongoing learning. As I said, we cannot bring enough resources just to solve our way out of this. We need to learn part of our way out of this. We have to keep doing learning, whether it's through PLCs, whether it's every day when teachers talk to each other, when administrators talk with teachers, whatever it may be. So we have a tight focus of what it is we need to learn. And lastly, you tie everything together. So when you pull on the PD, you're pulling on the academic plan, you're pulling, and it's all generated through student data. That makes sense?
Yeah, I have, in terms
You
of
want
the,
10 minutes.
again, in preparation for our next meeting, this document here, the Grand Rapids Public Schools Performance System, the structure and overview, this document here that starts
Yes.
out with
Yes.
Cambridge.
Yes.
Is this, so in the instructional effectiveness project?
Right, and if you look at that document, Tony, that's from 1 year ago, almost.
Okay.
And I could tweak that document with some updated language, but the concept there is still very much what I just described, how it all gets tied together. If you look
Right.
at the second page,
Right.
we're gonna go into that in detail.
Okay.
What are the 3 areas that we focus on for an evaluation? It is student growth, our students growing, because that's number 1, most important, our students learning and growing. Number 2, instructional practice, and then number 3, professional growth. We as professionals need to be growing if we want students to grow and learn. So that's very much on the same target, only we have defined that even clearer. We have detailed information now that we will be giving you at the next one, and we will get out that information. And we also have a YouTube that articulates our whole evaluation plan.
Okay, so, so this
Plus
is,
this
the
Danielson
Danielson
rubric.
rubric is one, I hate to use the word element because there's 63 of them, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, this is one part.
Yes,
We also have, and this is informing what the classroom observation
yes.
portion
This
of
defines-
the evaluation
Yes,
plan. There's also two other elements as outlined here, which are the tripod surveys
yes.
and the basis, and this is the, because the other thing that we have to talk about is the quantitative measurements. that will
Correct, the
be-
statistical model that
so-
gives you the,
So, just to just for, again, for the next one, we, not a lot of discussion right now, but, so there's the observation components as this, which the Daniel Roots and surveys, and then this quantitative measure that measures academic performance and other issues that, and then basis policy. David Seitz would be coming in to discuss that at some point.
yes,
So those are the three major components of,
yes.
with these,
student
with
growth.
these, okay.
And the observations is called instructional practice. And so I will update that document with correct
Okay,
language.
yeah, that would be good.
And I think that will be helpful to you, because some of that language is outdated now, because we have learned so much,
Okay,
and we
right.
have grown.
Sam,
Yes, absolutely.
Growth would be this.
So three components: student growth, instructional practice, professional growth.
so student growth, instructional practice, professional growth.
Correct. And I'm sure you, and I can send you the link to the YouTube too, but I know you could also.
Yeah, that would be good. Again, for the next one, we can watch that beforehand. And then I will, get together with, I guess, Carolyn and perhaps you, maybe we could just kind of think about how to.
Sure.
Because this is, because you guys are spending years doing it, and we got like once a month for.
You got that
40
right.
minutes, right? So, and we'll never get through it. Okay, the last portion of our, discussion is, of our day, and actually, Mary Jo, if you want,
Yes.
if you guys, because I think that
Sure. Be
we
happy.
might be asking, unless you gotta run.
No, I do
Um,
not.
And, you know, Teresita and Dana are the only ones left, so
Well, hey.
we can have them. I want to think of a way that, so we want to do reports. This would be relatively small documents that would inform the committee and then thus the board about major things that need to happen. One of the things that, for instance, that I would like to suggest, I have gotten people, there have been a couple board members who've sent me an email and said, can your committee do this, you know? And so that would be a way to get a list together, and then I would have to share with Carolyn, for future topics, yes. I think that this committee, unless we're requested by a lot of people, should determine what our policy discussions. And I want to make this float because we might want to do teacher evaluation for 6 months. You know, I mean, we might want to get really good at it and just really understand it in terms of policy. And hopefully the rest of the board will have some input. But I do want to focus on what allows us to have extended conversations about a small number of topics is these reports on. So for instance, I know that perhaps a month from now, will the embargoed MEP scores be available?
They're available
Okay,
right
so
now.
they are now, okay. So perhaps this committee should see a report on that, not an extended discussion, but a report on the MEP scores and what's happened. Okay, so, and are there any other things that we should just consider for next month? Reports?
Reports, I don't know if, let me give you a couple examples, you tell me if that's worth it. So for example, I think it might be helpful for this committee to have an update on what's happening at Union High School.
Oh, the Union High School governance, yeah.
School governance, I mean, what we're doing there, because that's a real.
Actually, Mayor, do you mind just, can you give this
I sure
information
can.
to
I've got it.
Carolyn?
And
Okay.
I'm just making my thoughts.
We can decide whether or not,
Yeah,
I'll meet with
fine.
Carolyn, and we can decide whether or not it's feasible to get all of these together, but let's go ahead and hear
Sure.
them now.
The other two that I have, one is an update on the newcomers program,
Well, that's very good, thank you.
and
Yeah.
another one is the English language learners. We've had a good
Great.
special ed.
Mhm. Mhm.
Obviously short or whatever, but those are
is it the evaluation that you're interested in when you talk about ELO, or the program itself? 'Cause I have a number of evaluation reports that are from 2011, 2012 too, that can come to this committee if you're interested in them. And the ELO evaluation is one of those.
How about, this would be good, I think that, again, the reports that you have are probably lengthier and we could have in our packet, but if we could have a report that summarizes. So I think that what Mo is probably interested is, we just kind of want to know how things are going. You know? And I think the newcomers is a distinct from ELO, and I think that would be something. So, and again, this doesn't have to be done in March, you know, but I think sometime soon. So those are really good examples.
Yeah, 'cause I
So-
think
so-
for board members as well as for people who are watching us, those are programs that we don't talk about a whole lot.
Yeah.
Board table that we really need to know.
So you'd like an executive summary of the evaluation report, so that, you know, one pager?
Yeah,
could
actually, what I think
suffice?
that, what I was, the way I would phrase it is that we want kind of a state of ELO. The evaluation reports would be evidence, but it could also be what the director of ELO has to say about what's happening, and it could be, so what are we working towards, what are we trying to fix or not, or we're doing well, et cetera, so.
So I can provide you, if you'd like, I can provide you a copy of the full evaluation from the last year, and I can do an executive summary, which would be a shortened version of that basically focuses on the student outcomes and some of the outcomes, and then Maida could address some of your questions about the program.
So for next month though, we're not necessarily changing gears. We'll still be dealing.
Well, we don't have a list of topics for next month for the reports. Next month, we will spend a lengthy time on teacher evaluation.
And hopefully, and meet.
Awesome.
But we will have a report on the meet, and not necessarily a lengthy discussion.
Well, I guess I only mention that because, and it gives, it's only me speaking, but obviously teacher evaluation definitely is a huge impact for the district, and obviously meet results are sort of meat and potatoes of the district to some extent. So I definitely don't want us to rush through either of those, and not that obviously other topics aren't important, but for the limited time we do have, I just want to make sure we give those the appropriate time to really delve into those and not necessarily just surface reports, I guess, is what I'm getting
Well,
at.
here's, and let's see if we try to.
ELL might be really important, I think, to this community.
Yeah, I'm not saying it isn't.
Right.
But again,
Well, here's the way, I think that what we can kind of assess each month is that, the board will need to see some analysis of meat. And we could, as a committee, and also this committee is gonna spend a longer period of time on a small number of big teacher evaluation. It's connected to the academic plan, it's connected to the way we teach. It's a big thing we need. We may decide as a committee that we should, in the future, give just as much time to meet results or other kind of measures. To some extent, I think that we will get into an analysis of meet, because we have to do an analysis of the way quantitative measures of achievement are figured into the teacher evaluation. And so we'll have to end up understanding that. But we could, I think that I have one other, there is one other big policy-related issue that Mo, Carolyn, and I discussed and agreed to, but we can see what others would have. So rather than wait until we have time to do a lengthy discussion on MEEP, we get a summary and a report on the MEEP at the next meeting, and we can decide which of these others we should have at the next meeting. Or Carolyn can decide what's feasible, because we want to have the staff have time to actually produce the reports.
Question, Mr. Chairman. You said the MEEP scores are out?
Yes.
They came out Monday,
Released, yep.
and we can get those online?
and I guess that's sort of where my question, that's where my concern is geared, because I've already obviously not read through all of those results line by line, but read through enough to think that I can almost surmise what some of the contents of that one-page report might be. So I sort of already have questions that I don't know, I guess I'm just concerned about, again, an overview and not having an opportunity to really delve into that, I suppose. So I just want to, I guess, put that out there officially that, that's all.
Well, if you guys want to look at this Academic Achievement Committee outlining general description document, so this is what the reports this would be the way that the reports would answer the questions that we have. If we have these reports, and I think that they would end up being lengthier than a page, but that what we would get from the administration, I think, that we would have answers to these questions, and they could generate either short-term questions that we would deal with in our committee meeting, or spurred the situation where we would provide a longer talk context, either in this committee, or perhaps we could take, maybe this is something that the entire board should look at. And so maybe we'll see this report and suggest that the MEEP report, that we think that this is something that we should send on to the board for full discussion at a board meeting. Or maybe we should do, or maybe we need to spend one or two board, committee meetings just delving deeply into the MEEP scores.
For me, I think it'll be important to delve into those MEPs.
Okay.
Because I want to educate myself and bring myself up to par in that area.
Okay. Can we, so let's plan for sure that we have at least a report and get a sense of what kind of work, we'll discuss next time what kind of work we need to do as a committee. We'll look into the report of the MEEP and figure out how much time. And the other thing is that we may want to have this discussion with the full board and ask the president to make it a full board meeting discussion. I think that one thing that's important, because we'll go a couple of years without talking about a MEEP, and before we know it, we have a whole new board that's never talked about the MEEP, and so it's really important that we do that. So, all right, so that will be an agenda item for the next meeting, is a MEEP report, and then a discussion of what else we should do with analyzing the MEEP. Are there any other topics? Mo listed a couple. Any topics? We can also update this as we go. So for now, what we have is MEEP, Union High School Governance Board, the newcomers, and ELL. As discussed as possible, certainly MEEP, and then we'll discuss with Carolyn how many of these others that we can accomplish in the next meeting. If you look at the second page of the policy relating comprehensive reports, these are other topics. Actually, I've been referring to only one other. Common Core implementation, that we can decide how that fits, I think, as we go. To some extent, I think that as I see the way the evaluation tool is that basically, since the evaluation tool is geared towards instruction and learning, and what we're also teaching is related to the Common Core, maybe we won't want to do that. We can decide that later. Teacher voice has been something that has been an often, we brought up discussion of teacher voice kind of in the relationship to the instructional council, and then how to make sure that the board gets input from teachers in relationship to the decisions that it makes in the classroom, such as textbooks, syllabi, some of the stuff that was talking about. The instructional council works well sometimes and not so well other times at providing that. We don't really want to spend a lot of time restructuring instructional council now. Plus, it's part of, instructional council, as Mo mentioned, is part of the GREA contract, which we're negotiating right now. What we would like to, at the end of the year, have as a goal is for this committee to explore ways in which teacher voices are included into the decisions that happen in education. And what that will look like would be better for us to delve into after we've done teacher evaluation and some other things. So these are the three broad topics, but yet they're not, that we're proposing. Certainly teacher evaluation is what we're starting with, and we can look at it. Anything else at this time? That's good. All right, thanks. All right, thanks a lot.
Hey, Mary Jo, what is Common Core